Alright, quick checklist. That's turned off. That's turned off. That's turned off. That apparently is turned on. I do believe the stream is live. And so it's time to go ahead and get this started. Adjust my squeaky microphone. Yep, there we go. Alright, very good. Let's do this. Hello! Shadowcat back! And we're back with the tabletop stream. We're back to Warhammer 40k. We're back to Psykers. Because last time we were here, we finished up Psykers at the combat level. However, while I was doing this, it occurred to me, and I talked about it several times, that Psykers are more than just like combat casters. No. Psykers are so much more terrifying than that. Psykers cannot just mind control a person, Psykers can mind control many people. Psykers can mind control an entire population. Or they can literally lift an entire city out of the ground and turn it upside down. Or create an entire warp storm over a continent, or even destroy entire planets. And so that's what we have to start getting into. Because Psykers are just... Look. Psykers are essentially the wizards of Warhammer 40k. And when it comes to wizards, at least in things like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinders, a high-level wizard is one of the most terrifying things that you will ever come across. Now, that is not to say that every race, or not every race, but every class in Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder is not terrifying in its own regard. No. See, a level 20 barbarian or fighter, or to a lesser extent even a paladin or a cleric, is a thing of legend, because a high-level fighter, barbarian, cleric, paladin, something like that, is a walking weapon. They can literally wander through a battlefield just cleaving a path of destruction behind them because they are that high a level of combatant. When it comes to something like a high-level thief or rogue, you're talking about somebody who has become so invisible that they border on intangible. Somebody whose very existence could best be described as ethereal. They can disappear right in front of your eyes, they can reappear behind you, and they can kill you before you even realize you're in danger. If you're talking about a high-level druid, well, a high-level druid in the middle of a city is kind of terrifying because every single vermin, insect, whatever, every vine root that you can find in that place can come up and tear the city down, given enough time. A high-level druid inside of a forest is literally the forest. And if you're inside of it, you are at its complete mercy. Then you get into classes like wizards and sorcerers, and they have power. Oh, they have so much power. They have the power to trivialize pretty much anything. I mean, a high-level wizard can stop time, and they can do whatever they want to you. A high-level wizard does not need to fight a high-level fighter. They can just stop time, and then, I don't know, put a spike on the ground, push the fighter over, and as soon as time resumes, they end up impaled. And that's if they even have to do that. They have the foresight to avoid the fight entirely. They have the ability to simply kill things with a single word, with a look. Or they can simply skip town and travel across the entire multi-planar universe. And yet Psykers are going to be so much worse than that, because even a high-level wizard, a level 20 wizard spells, are pretty much relegated to a local area. Psykers, on the other hand, will not be. Because according to the lore, they're not. I've talked before about entire hive cities falling under the control of a single Psyker that was left unchained. And that's what we're going to be doing. It's gonna be nuts. Our Psykers are going to make level 20 wizards look paltry in comparison, and we are going to create something that when you hear the word, you're going to run. We are going to create something that is going to be worthy of Exterminatus, because Exterminatus might be the only way to kill it. And just think, not only are we going to make this, but there is a small chance that you could actually be one of them. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to need our browser, and we're going to need our spreadsheet. Oh, I'm glad there wasn't porn on that. Okay. So let's take a look at what we got so far. Now, we have been filling this in. We've been filling this in pretty well. And we still got this. I'm still really happy with the way this turned out. I'm really happy with the percentages over here. I think this is going to be really fun once we get to it. Everything that we've done so far has been at the local level, and I'm happy with this. I'm wondering if maybe we should start a new spreadsheet for... Or this is all the combat level. I wonder if we should start a new spreadsheet for the local level. Maybe. You know, I can do that. I have so many spreadsheets already on this one. It's kind of insane. Actually, let me count these out. Starting with the Imperial Guard, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is our 15th sheet. And if I go ahead and start a new one, insert sheet after, we're just going to call this, we're going to call this Psyker Local. And we'll go with that. I need a drink real quick. Dry spot in my throat. It's the absolute worst. And while we're doing that, I do have people in the chat, so we'll touch on that real quick. Blizzard Star is in the chat. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you. JP is in the chat. Hello, JP. Good to see you, too. JP says, it's alive! Maybe. I prefer to operate in that gray area there. So, alive, dead, I don't know. We'll figure it out along the way. JPL says, are we going to need a Latin primer to play? Actually, no. And, this is not really relevant to anything, but the language used in Warhammer 40k sounds like Latin, but it is not Latin. It is Latin-inspired. But the language used is actually called High Gothic. It's completely fictional, made up by Games Workshop themselves. It's Latin-inspired because they took a lot of the grammar and such from Latin, but if you were to actually run any of these words through, like, a translator, they don't exist. Adeptus Astartes, not words. Sororitas, also not word. At least I'm almost certain it's not a word. I think sorority is an actual Latin word, or if it's not Latin, it must be Greek. But I do believe that Greek is a derivative of Latin, so it's close. I'm almost certain that sororitas is not an actual word. Exterminatus is also not a word, as far as I know. I don't speak Latin, I don't know that much about it. But I do know that most of the words are not actual words. Like my favorite part of the Imperial Guard, the Officio Assassinorum, which is so fun to say. Complete gibberish. It's not a thing. None of the bureaus and agencies and everything that are inside of the Imperium of Man are actual words. They just sound really cool. which is why Games Workshop, actually did that. So, no, you will not need a Latin primer to play. You might need a 40k primer to play, though. Just saying. Like, if this is confusing to you now, it's going to continue to be confusing to you when we're playing the game. And JP says, next game, Sanskrit. Absolutely not. I don't even know anything about Sanskrit. I've only ever heard of it. And I've heard that it is like one of the hardest languages, period. Partially because it's just that old and like no one really knows anything about it anymore. And partially because it does not ascribe itself to any of the language conventions that we use today. So yeah, definitely not doing that. Like, the closest we might ever get to that is if I needed to translate something into like an incomprehensible language, I might translate it into Hebrew. Because unless you're Jewish, no one speaks Hebrew. And that's about as close we're going to get to that. Let's see. I do believe, if we're going like backwards in time, Hebrew was a derivative of Babylonian, which was a derivative of Sanskrit, if I understand my history correctly. I mean, JP says it's a proto-classic. I believe that Sanskrit is basically a proto-language. One of the first. I don't even know what the first languages would have been. I mean, I suppose technically speaking, all of your ancient languages probably, or your ancient civilizations probably had a language. So your Central and South American civilizations, the Aztecs, Incans, Mayans, they probably had a language. But I don't think that they actually have any written language. I don't think there's any actual examples of a language from them still. But they still must have had some kind of verbal language. Maybe that's what makes Sanskrit unique. Maybe Sanskrit was one of the first written languages, if not the first written language. Because the technology for writing is one of those developments that we did along the way. It's not like we started off writing things down. No, we had to learn how to take language, assign letters to it, and then arrange those letters to write down what we were saying. But that's just my best understanding. I am absolutely not an anthropologist. I know very little about it. Okay, though. We're gonna get into this because I don't know anything about anthropology, but I do know a fair amount about game making, so I'll stick to what I do better. And what I do better is we're gonna have to take everything that we've done here and we need to step this up to a local level. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to figure out what our categories are. Energy release is something we're going to need. I'm going to add this up here. Telepathy, yes, we're going to keep that. Telekinesis, we'll need that as well. Now, combat maneuvers. I cannot see a reason why we need to scale up combat maneuvers to a local level. After all, what would be the point? I see no way that these scale up. Healing and restoration? Yes, as well as buffing and debuffing. These could be scaled up. So, healing, restoration. Buffing and debuffing. After that, we had telekinesis, which we've already written down. I don't know how that's going to scale up either, but we may look at it. And telepathy and divination will absolutely scale up. So we're going to copy this. We're going to paste it over here so we know what we're working on. And I need to reformat everything here before we get started, because otherwise it's going to cause me trouble later. So reformat everything as text. Alright, so let's start with the easy one. Energy release. Now, I say this is going to be easy because I already kind of have an idea what I'm going to do. And I was thinking about how we expand this to a larger level. Thinking about what does an energy release look like, which is what led me on the path to really growing Psykers out into what they can do. And my thought was this. We have energy release, and I can pick a target and I can shoot energy like directly at it. So if it's fire, lightning, whatever, I can just shoot a bolt of crackling lightning at something and vaporize it. So if the combat level is direct damage, then the local level should be indirect damage. And so how is that going to work? I was thinking about it, and indirect damage is actually something that we already kind of have. So I want to come back to the rules here. We'll go with the Starjammer one, because I want to look into environment. Now, when it comes to environment, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And JP says, my mind is picturing a Psyker as an angry Vorlon from Babylon 5. Except more. Like, when it comes to the telepathy and telekinesis, oh, you are like right on the money. But Psykers can do so much more than even the Vorlons could. And at a higher scale, too. Or at least everything that we've seen so far. When it came to the Vorlons, we didn't see a whole lot. We got hints and legends and myths and mysteries about the Vorlons, but that was kind of what made them really terrifying. The most terrifying monster is the one that you don't see. And the Vorlons were basically a monster in plain sight. Kinda. It's like, you can see it, but you still have no idea what it is, or what it's capable of. Good luck. Alright, so in environments, we have all kinds of stuff. I've got terrains, I've got atmospheres, I've got all kinds of fun stuff that I love to use when I'm playing Starfinder. But here's what I want. Weather. So obviously, we can play whatever weather. Tabletop gaming is supposed to be a simulator for real, or at least realistic, worlds, and so there is rules for any kind of weather that you might come across. We've got rules for rain, which gives you a -4 penalty to perception checks. It also snuffs out any fire. Snow, which also gives us difficult terrain. Heavy snows, other precipitation. We've got dust storms, snowstorms, but the one that I'm here for is thunderstorms. So when it comes to a thunderstorm, in addition to wind and precipitation, a thunderstorm is accompanied by lightning that can pose a hazard to characters who don't have proper shelter, especially those in metal armor. As a rule of thumb, assume 1 bolt per minute for a 1-hour period. So that's 60 bolts per hour. At the center of a storm, the GM rolls to hit. Every bolt deals between 4d8 to 10d8 electrical damage. 1 in 10 thunderstorms is accompanied by a tornado. Which, I mean, might be true in Texas, but seems kind of high to me. So anyway, we have rules for a thunderstorm. And when I'm thinking about like doing indirect damage, this is about as indirect as you can get. If the Psyker was able to change the weather to create a thunderstorm, then the Psyker could theoretically strike characters or whatever targets you want with lightning damage. So, Psyker creates a storm, storm strikes something with lightning, that thing is destroyed. And this is completely in line with what we've seen from Psykers in the lore. Psykers can absolutely affect things like the weather on a grand scale. So if we've got that, it's not exactly difficult to then simply change the energy type. So if we went with cold, we could just say snowstorm, right? And this comes with, in addition to wind and precipitation coming to other types of storm, it leaves 1d6 inches of snow on the ground afterwards. And I can change that as much as I want, actually. So that covers electrical and cold, but we have more than just that. If we come back here and remind ourselves, our energy types are fire, cold, electric, disintegration, and sonic. So, cold is a blizzard. Electrical is a thunderstorm. Fire. Fire would have to be a firestorm. Literally dropping fire from the sky. And while there isn't really a weather feature for that, it's also not hard. I would have simply, say, a storm that is dropping fireballs on a city from the sky for however long it lasts. That is an option. For disintegration, well, disintegrating is also acid damage. The quick answer there simply being acid rain. That's simple. I mean, acid rain's a real thing. And we even have rules for that if we come up to atmospheres. Because we have rules for a corrosive atmosphere. As the name suggests, a corrosive atmosphere eats away at matter. The type and speed of the erosion varies, but the most common use of it is capable of dissolving most matter. Typical corrosive atmosphere deals anywhere from 1 acid damage per minute to up to 10d6 acid damage per round to creatures and objects within. Certain metals and treated materials may be immune to the specific atmosphere of the planet, and often the corrosion can be mitigated with dutiful preparation. So we can totally do acid rain. That leaves sonic. I really have no idea how we would do sonic. I'm drawing a blank here. I really don't know how we integrate sonic damage into a local area. The only thing that I can think of is that since the critical is knockdown for a sonic attack, because that's what sonic weapons usually do, is a knockdown, we could go with something like a windstorm. Now if we come back down here, rain, snow, storms, here we go, snowstorm, powerful storms, winds. Okay, so a windstorm. It says, powerful enough to bring down branches, if not whole trees, non-lethal ranged weapon attack rolls, or non-energy ranged attack rolls. Take a -4 penalty, while attacks with archaic ranged weapons are impossible. Perception checks that rely on sound take a -8 penalty due to the howling wind. small characters might be knocked over. Oh, PC Unicorn's in the chat and says a big blue meteor falls out of the sky followed by chili dogs. I get what you're doing there. And now I want chili dogs. Look what you've done. You've made me hungry. I didn't get breakfast this morning. JP says buffeting / psychic damage? Well, buffeting, yes. I'm thinking that we go with a windstorm. The thing about this is it says small characters might be knocked down. That might, I mean, how do I know when they are or they aren't? However, I have dealt with this before. In Pathfinder, we should be able to find rules on that. Bestiary. No, I don't want the bestiary. Maybe under game mastering? Here we go, environment. Types of environments. Environmental hazards. Nope, that's not what I want. Weather, here we go. Winds. Powerful storms. Alright, weather. Weather's always good. So what does Pathfinder say about weather? Seasons, yes. Temperature variations, precipitation. But I want storms. Wind, here we go. So the wind is the category of the strength, wind speed, ranged weapon and siege weapon penalties, check size. Aha, here we go. So, what's going to happen here is, under a windstorm, which is any winds 51 miles or more, ranged weapon penalty, siege weapon penalty, ranged weapons are impossible, but we are talking fantasy, so we're talking like bullet stones, arrows, things like that. Siege weapons, which are going to be boulders, take a -4 penalty. The check size is medium. So, when it says that, creatures that are listed, or of the listed size or smaller, are unable to move forward against the force of the wind unless they succeeded a DC 10 strength check on the ground, or a DC 20 fly check if they're airborne. So that's any medium creature. That would be your characters, and most characters that you would find in a city. The blown away size. Creatures of the size listed on the ground are knocked prone, roll 1d4 times 10 feet, and take 2d6 points of non-lethal damage unless they succeed on a DC 15 strength check. Flying creatures are blown back 2d6 times 10 feet, and take 2d6 points of non-lethal damage due to battering and buffeting unless they succeed a DC 25 fly check. That's what we want. And I think these are the rules that we can use. I think that's what we're going to go with. So let's start writing things down. So under energy release, I'm going to go ahead and say, nope. Can I type? Energy release storm. Okay then. Rules. So the rules for this, I think, are going to be this. We need to be able to use both our variables, both of our psychic sensitivity and the actual roll that we make. And so one of the things that we need to actually... I'm going to move this down real quick. I'll put this down here for a minute. I know you can't see that. That's because I want to copy this. And I want to bring this over. There we go. I'm going to bring this up here, put that right there so we know what we're working with. that I can delete that there. Put that there. Alright, and just as a reminder, we're going to start with a D4, D6, D8, D10, and D12. And this is going to be level 1 through 4, level 5 through 8, 8, level 9 through 12, level 13 through 16, and level 17 through 20. Alright, very good. So now we can get into the actual rules. So, the range is going to be a 1 mile radius per sensitivity. So that's how we're going to integrate the sensitivity here. The stronger your connection to the warp, the larger an area you can affect, which is good. I mean, we want our more powerful Psykers to be able to affect a greater area. If you are a Pi, you should not be able to affect an area as large as an Alpha. It's just the way things usually go. If you're stronger than somebody weaker than you should not be able to lift more than you. Them's just the rules. So the range is going to be 1 mile radius per sensitivity. So if you're an Alpha class, we are talking about a 16-mile radius. Now, I can tell you just where I live. And mind you, I live in like the middle of nowhere. So, like, very small town. All of like 700 people. A 16-mile radius would cover not just my town, but it would cover 5 or 6 surrounding towns as well. It would be enormous. The duration is going to be it's going to be a psychic power roll. So it's going to be roll psychic power, and that's going to be rounds. So again, if you are a simple Pi level Psyker, you can affect a 1 mile radius. However, it's not going to last very long, and that's even if you can do it. Because, one thing that I forgot to add in here. I don't think I need to, but let's just keep in mind that local abilities, because we've got it written down on the other page. This is going to be the range, and it's going to be the cost. So all of your combat Psyker abilities are only going to cost you 1 point. Which is fine, you can use your psychic abilities in combat as much as you want. At the local level, they're going to cost you 5 points each. Which means that, yes, technically speaking, a Pi level Psyker would be able to call down a firestorm on a city. But it's only going to be a 1 mile radius, and it will only be for, because they need to have 5, they need to have 5 points. They would need to be level 5, because the number of uses you get is equal to your sensitivity times your level. They would need to be level 5 just to do it once, and it would only last for 1d6 rounds. Okay, So that's how long it's going to last. Now, as far as the effect goes, how much of this should I leave up to the dice and how much of it should be left up to the GM, I wonder. So, when it comes to thunderstorms, where the lightning strikes is essentially up to the GM. But given that you, as the Psyker, are the one creating this storm, I do feel like perhaps I should be leaving this up to the Psyker. And so, how do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? There's also the fact that a firestorm created by a Psyker is going to have some direction to it. It's going to be rather hard to control, but it's more like you can't actually make it hit something, but you can try to guide it. So, what things might we hit? We might hit a person, we might hit a vehicle, or we might hit a building. I mean, what else could you possibly hit with it? You're talking about attacking a town or a city. It's either going to be a person, a vehicle, or a building. And I guess we could put a starship in the same category as building, because they're pretty big. I think what we can do is this. So we're going to have a roll. We're going to have a roll here, and I'm going to say a roll and hit. So you could hit a person with it. And I suppose every strike should be an AoE of some kind. But we'll go ahead and we'll say the target is going to be a creature, a vehicle, and then a building or starship. And then, of course, nothing. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll just weight this. So to hit a creature, because creatures are small, it's going to be a natural 20. To hit a vehicle, 18 to 19. For a starship, that would be, let's see, 17, 15, so 15 through 17. And then nothing would simply be 1 through 14. And I'm not going to put this here. Let's just say, roll to see what is struck. Damage is equal to... Now, we are using 5 points for this. Does that mean that we should also multiply our damage? Because, it did say that a lightning strike, and let's just go back to that one. Hurricane, this is all windstorms, powerful storms, here, thunderstorm, here we go. So every bolt deals between 4d8 and 10d8 electrical damage. Okay, right there. So let's think about that. Let's go with our alpha, okay? Let's say that our alpha is the one creating this storm. And a person gets struck. So our alpha category Psyker, level 1, is going to do 16 d4s of damage. Now, 16 d4s, what is that? 16 times 4, what am I doing? 16 times 4 is 64. I know that. And the lower end of a lightning bolt does 4d8, that's 32. So the natural lightning bolt is doing half of the damage, minimum, of our lowest level Psyker. That actually seems kind of reasonable. I mean, if we went with our average here, which would be an iota, so power 8, they would do 8d4s of damage, so max 32. Natural lightning does 4d8s, also 32. So that's like right there in line with conjuring natural lightning. So why don't we go up to the high end? The highest end for our iota would be 8d12s. The highest level for lightning would be 10d8s. 10d8s is easy. That caps out at 80 points of damage. 8d12s would be 96, I think, if I got my math right. Still very much in line with what natural lightning would do. And that's the middle point for our Psyker. Anybody lower than that will do less damage than natural lightning, and anybody higher than that would do more damage. So I'm inclined to not multiply the damage. So damage, I'm just going to say roll psychic power for damage. Deal damage in... let's see, I want to have a radius here. I wonder. Let me look at lightning. So we already know that we're doing electrical damage here. Let me see if we've got rules for... And I want to see if we've got the rules in Starfinder for lightning. Because I think we do. No? Flight. Nope. Nothing in there. Really? Maybe I just got the wrong word. Reanimate, junk sword, flight, discharge, chain surge? No, I don't like this. Let's just look up the classic lightning spell in Pathfinder. So I'm going to want the arcane spell list. Lightning bolt. So the area of effect is a 120-foot line. And you get to strike everything that is in that line. It isn't AoE, it's just a little bit different. And it does give you a reflex saving throw for half. So I think we'll do that. Except instead of a line, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make this a different AoE. So if it's a line, I think that we'll make sure that it does the whole line thing in all different directions. So if we divide that by 4, that gives us 30 feet. And I think that's what we'll go with. Deal damage in a 30-foot radius. A reflex save for half. Okay, so we got that. Then we'll just paste this back in. And this is perfect. The only problem that I see is this doesn't really account for Sonic again, because this is all, actually, this doesn't apply to everything. This only really works for fire and lightning, because those are the ones that actually strike. For the blizzard, we'll need to have different rules. For the acid rain, we'll need to have different rules. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move this down. So I'm just going to say, for effect, C-type. And this is going to be fire and lightning. So that'll work for those. For cold, how do we want to do this? So we're already rolling psychic power for a number of rounds. And what I think we can do is, should we allow 1 inch of snow per round? Because that could end up being a lot. I mean, that could end up being an awful lot of snow. Like, burying everything alive levels of snow. They said that the snowstorm in this one, environment, here we go. Yeah, leaves 1d6 inches of snow on the ground afterwards. That's for the whole storm. Do we have rules for like a blizzard? Can we do that? No, just for heavy snow. So, heavy snow has the same effects as snowfall, but also restricts visibility as fog does. Oh, a day of heavy snow leaves 1d4 feet of snow on the ground. Snow at this depth counts as difficult terrain, costs 4 squares of movement to enter a square covered with heavy snow. How do we want to do this? I don't know, necessarily. Because we're going to add the potential to have a lot of snow. Like, let's think about this. If we did psychic power for inches, that means that our alpha level Psyker would have the possibility of leaving 64 inches of snow on the ground after a snowstorm. 64 inches is more than 5 feet. That is a lot. But that's only at level 1, which is, you know, very significant, but still only level 1. When we get up to like level 20, now we're talking 16 d12s. 16 times 12 is 192. I actually didn't even need to roll that. It's d12s. That means that every dice is a potential foot. So 16 feet of snow? I mean, that would destroy an entire city. But I mean, that is kind of what we're going for here. So how do we make this work? I need to have something kind of reasonable, because if we're talking about, like, rounds, 192 is 192, right? Yeah, 192 rounds. If I divide that by 10, comes out to 19 minutes. I can't drop 16 feet of snow in 19 minutes. I mean, that would be insane. At the same time, however, if I made it 192 days, that's more than half a year. So where's the happy medium here? If I changed it to hours, what is 192 hours? 192 hours, which would be the maximum, would be, or 192 minutes. Or no, I did say hours. 192 hours would be 8 days. Right? Yeah, 8 days. So an 8-day long, an 8-day long blizzard that drops 16 feet of snow. That's actually entirely reasonable. This is actually entirely reasonable. Okay, I need to reorganize this, because we're not all going to have the same durations anymore. So this is going to be a fire or lightning storm. So a fire or a lightning storm will have this duration. The effect is going to be C-type, and then the save is going to be a reflex for half. And I can take that off of the end there. And we'll just format this like an actual spell. Alright, so that takes care of that. Now, cold is going to need to have a duration and an effect. So the duration is going to be roll psychic power to equal hours. The effect is going to be roll psychic power, and it's going to be create create snow equal to roll over the duration of the storm. We're also going to have to drop the temperature. So for this storm, we're going to need to make it cold. The question is, how cold? Nope, that's getting back into space. Biomes, deep water, desert. I want temperature. That's wind. Here we go, cold dangers. Alright, so we have cold, which is anything below 40 degrees, which we already know that we can't do that because we need to have snow. So severe cold. This is anything below 0 degrees. An unprotected character must succeed a fortitude save every 10 minutes. DC 15 plus 1 for every previous check, or take 1d6 non-lethal damage. You can attempt a survival check to gain a bonus to the saving throw, and you might even be able to apply the bonus to other characters as well. Extreme Cold is going to be -20. That is 1d6 lethal cold damage per minute, no saving throw. I kind of want to be able to make these better, but I'm not sure how. Except to maybe tie it to level. Actually, no. I see no reason to make it, Well, actually, no. Let's think about that. Because we're going to need to expand this. I could make it so this is extreme cold to all creatures that are outside in it. Because remember, we have more levels here. This is only local. Keep in mind, we also have a regional to do. So in combat, I can cast cold directly at you to kill you. At the local level, we could make it extremely cold, and so I can't do it directly, but you might die from it. At the regional, we could make it severe cold by simply changing the regional weather. At the continental, we could just make it cold. And then for planetary, you just simply can't affect the temperature on that grand a scale. So yeah, I think we can do that. I think we can go ahead and make it extremely cold. Okay, so we're going to change temperature to I'm going to specify this. Change outside temperature to extreme cold. And that's all that we really need. I don't need to add wind or lightning or anything else to it. All that is going to happen is that the Psyker is going to open themselves up to the warp, gather the energy within them, and then release that energy to just extract all the heat out of the area, and then create precipitation to bury an area in snow. I will specify this, though. Adjust temperature 1 step per hour. Because it shouldn't just be like, hey, my Psyker's going to go ahead and do this, and suddenly the area is now extreme cold. No, it'll have to actually cool off. And since we're doing this in hours, that means that as soon as the Psyker uses this ability, over the next hour it will go from normal to cold. And then from cold to severe cold, and from severe cold to extreme cold, as the snow begins to fall. That also means that if you were to do this in a hot environment, like a really hot planet, it would have to go from, well, I mean, what are our options here? Cold dangers. Should have heat dangers too, don't we? Catching on fire, lava. No, I don't want that hot. Do we not have it? Environmental rules. Okay. Why don't we go back up to atmospheres? Because I think we have hot atmospheres. No atmosphere, thick, thin, toxic, clouds. Do I not have hot? Like, what am I supposed to do for things like deserts? cold dangers, falling, things falling on you, high gravity. Oh no, here we go. I just missed it. Heat dangers. Alright. Character in very hot conditions that is above 90 degrees must make fortitude saves. In severe heat that's above 110. That says Texas. What are you talking about? They must attempt a fortitude saving throw every 10 minutes. Extreme heat, which is over 140. Boiling water, fire, lava deals fire or does lethal fire damage. Okay, so yeah. That means that technically this Psyker could go into an extreme heat environment, and they could just use this ability and chill an area from extreme to severe, severe to hot, hot to normal, and then from normal to cold, cold to severe, severe to extreme. It would take like 6 hours to do it, but it could be done. Now keep in mind that this also has to go the other way at the end, so we're talking about a minimum of 12 hours to get it down to that extreme cold. That means that you would either have to be like a level 12 Pi, and you'd have to roll a 12 on that, or you just have to be a greater level Psyker. But I think that'll work. I think that'll work really well. And then saves, there really are no saves to involved in this. So save none. I mean, the temperature, of course, you're going to get saves against. The snow isn't going to kill you. I mean, not initially, anyway. And JP says, suddenly the floor is lava. Hey, I am the DM. I can do that. Okay, so that's going to take care of cold. So cold is just going to be a snowstorm. It's going to be like the worst snowstorm ever, but it's going to be a snowstorm. And keep in mind, like, this is going to change temperatures to extreme cold, and we just saw the rules for that. So extreme cold, you take 1d6 lethal cold damage per minute, no saving throw. In addition, a character must succeed at a fortitude saving throw per previous check to take 1d4 non-lethal damage. An alpha level Psyker could do this for 8 days maximum. Could you imagine living a week like this? The only people who have to live a week like this are people living in the polar ice caps. That's just insane. Alright, so we've got fire, thunder, cold. We need to get acid. Alright, so the duration, the effect, and then we'll get into saves. We'll start with the effect, actually. So, with the effect, I mean, we're already using our sensitivity for range, which means that we need to use... We're also going to be using our psychic roll for duration. I want to look back here at corrosive again. Here we go. So the corrosive damage here does 1 acid damage per minute up to 10d6 acid damage per round to creatures and objects within. Certain metals and treated materials may be immune to a specific atmosphere of a planet, and often corrosion can be mitigated with dutiful preparation. So how do we do this? I feel like the easy answer is to tie it to their sensitivity, because this says it does up to 1 acid damage per minute. Now, that would require you being outside for 10 rounds. Now, that's a long time in combat, but I do feel like that if the area were covered in acid rain, I feel like you just wouldn't be outside. You would make every effort to not be outside. There's also the effects of what it would do, what it would do to everything else around the area, because like 1 acid damage per minute, you have to realize that 1 acid damage per minute is like acid rain here on Earth. Like, if there is acid rain, you can walk outside in it. I mean, people make this big deal out of acid rain. They're like, it's so bad for the environment. And it is. It really is. But you have to understand that when they're talking about that, they're talking about things that can't get out of the rain. Things like trees. I mean, acid rain destroys trees, but they also have to sit there in it. And then their roots are going to soak it up and it's going to be bad. But acid rain, like you used to get in California, you know, in places like LA, you can walk outside in it. It's not going to eat your eyeballs out or anything. It's going to irritate your skin. If you breathe it in, it'll irritate your lungs. It's bad, but it's not like Venus, where you walk outside and your skin literally melts off your bones, and then your bones dissolve. What I'm thinking is... the question I think we have to ask ourselves right now is, first off, is it going to be damage per minute or damage per round? I mean, per round means that you literally can't even step outside. If we go with per minute, you can run through it. And as long as you're not out there for more than 10 rounds, it should be fine. There's also the question of how much damage to do. Like, if I took an alpha level Psyker and I threw an alpha level Psyker's damage out there for the acid, we're talking about the potential to do 192 damage per round. And I'm curious about something. Archive of Nethys. I want to look something up. Conditions? No, I don't want conditions. I want poisons. So that's going to be under medical, I believe. And where would that be? Other items? Medicinals. Nope, this is not what I want. I want poisons. Special materials? No, I don't want that. Okay, hold on a second. I need to look something up real quick. Poisons. Here we go. And before I even bother dragging it over there, let me just take a look. Is it even in here? Because I think it is. It is not. I got radiation in there. Actually, no. Here we go. I got this. This is under afflictions, actually. afflictions, poisons. Alright, so there's no sulfuric acid, but we do have hydrofluoric acid. Now, hydrofluoric acid, I do believe, is like one of the nastier ones. Let's see. Hydrofluoric acid. Solution of hydrogen fluoride in water. Solutions of HF are colorless, acidic, and highly corrosive. Chemical formula. Strength. Here we go. JP says, is anyone going to live long enough to worry about the poison damage over time? I'm not necessarily worried about the damage over time so much as the initial damage. So let's see. Hydrofluoric acid acts as a strong acid which causes corrosive burns with immediate contact with the skin, eyes, respiratory system, etc. It is actually considered according to this, a weaker acid by definition and not nearly as corrosive as strong acids such as hydrochloric acid. However, the corrosivity is the least hazardous aspect of it. I'm going to say hydrofluoric acid versus sulfuric acid, because that's the one that most of us are very familiar with. Sulfuric acid is a carcinogen? I did not know that. I learned something today. Okay, so it's kind of a middling one. And being that it is a poison, it's not doing any actual damage. It says bodies of victims that reach the dead state dissolve completely unless the acid is neutralized within 1 minute. That's actually a really interesting way to think about it. Would be like to cover the entire area with acid. Okay, maybe I'll think about this the wrong way. Let's think about this a different way. Let's change our view of this. Instead of that, let's think about the range. So, like, if we had a pi psyker here, if it were doing, let's say, 1d4 acid damage per minute, that means that if it were out there, then, you know, whatever. An alpha class psyker would be able to do 64 damage per minute with acid. Now, since we're rolling the damage once every minute, that means that the hardness of a building would only get to apply once every minute. That means that for things like concrete, which is one of the things that I'm considering, could we, like, eat a building with it? That's one of the things that I want to look up. Not sure exactly where the rule is, but I know how to get there. Smashing an object. Here we go. So, here we go. Walls. Concrete, 3 feet thick, which is, like, a lot, has a hardness of 15. So that means that, like, if, that means that if we had an alpha level psyker who created acid rain over the area, if we use their psychic power, they would have to roll higher than 15 before they could do any damage to, say, a building. Now, a building, of course, you can see the walls would have 540 hit points. And that's per a 10-foot by 10-foot section. So it's not like the acid is going to eat a building, like, immediately. But if I could roll maximum damage from a first-level Psyker, Alpha category, that would be 64 minus 15 is going to be 49. And if I could do this 49 damage consistently, that means that if I could roll maximum damage every time, the acid rain from an alpha level Psyker could dissolve a building in 11 minutes. That's pretty extreme, but we are talking about an alpha here. Now, the alpha level Psyker will be able to shatter planets by the time we're done with it. This seems relatively reasonable, actually. Also, with a hardness of 5, that means that an alpha level Psyker would be capable of creating an acid that would eat at a building every single time, even if it rolled all 1s. But everyone short of that is going to struggle to deal damage to concrete. Now, that's for concrete, so we're talking like buildings. For a starship that's on the ground, it has a hardness of 35. It's going to have to be some seriously strong acid to get through that. Regular steel has 20. So if we're talking like vehicles on the ground. Although vehicles do have their own hardness category, so yeah, maybe we don't need to worry about that. I think that's how we're going to do it. I think that's going to work. So the duration is going to be the same as up here. It's going to be a number of rounds. Well, no, it's not going to be a number of rounds because the damage is going to be in minutes, so it has to be in minutes. So it's going to be minutes. Alright, so the effect is once per minute, roll psychic power for damage. Apply damage to all buildings, vehicles, and creatures outside for the full duration. Well, okay, full duration may be a little bit misleading because that would be like the full duration of the spell. For a full minute. So if you're not outside for a full minute, you can skate by. Technically speaking, that means that if you're outside for 9 rounds and come back in for 1, you get to avoid the damage. I'm going to assume, though, that you take that, turn that you're out of the acid rain to, like, get as much of it off as you can. Hence explaining that. And save. There is none. There really isn't any. Unless we add the poison back in. I mean, if we added the poison effect back in, there could be a save for that, but now we're saying that it's going to deal damage to you and has the possibility of poisoning you, which may be a bit much. Yeah, I'm not inclined to add the poison. And JP says, could you use the sonic attack on the ground to induce liquefaction, a la instant quicksand? That's actually not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea at all. We could swap out the whole windstorm idea for an earthquake. Let's investigate that. Alright, so we've got our cold, we've got our acid. Let's look at sonic now. So, duration, effect. So, quicksand, I don't think so. Because if we're talking like quicksand, then we're talking about like sinking the entire city into the ground. I don't think so. But I do like where you're going. Instead of quicksand, let's look at earthquake. Now, earthquake, I do not believe is a spell that we have. I can check. Mystic? Nope, nothing in the Mystic list. Technomancer? Nope, nothing in there. So we're not going to get it here. We'll have to go back to Pathfinder. When we go back to Pathfinder, we'll go here and we'll say Quake. We got Tremor Blast. You create a minor earthquake that can trip enemies. That's not what I want. However, earthquakes are natural phenomena. We might have better luck looking at a druid. So, druids get spells, and they're on the druid spell list. Earthquake! Here we go. It is an 8th level druid spell. Let's take a look at what it does. It's weird to find spells that wizards and sorcerers don't get, but hey, takes all kinds. Alright, so an earthquake has a long range, and it's an 80-foot radius spread. We're going to go a lot further than that. The duration is 1 round. We're going to go a lot longer than that. When you cast Earthquake, an intense but highly localized tremor rips through the ground. The powerful shockwave created by this spell knocks creatures down, collapses structures, opens cracks in the ground, and more. The effect lasts only 1 round, during which time creatures on the ground cannot move or attack. A spellcaster on the ground must make a concentration check at DC 20 plus the spell level, or lose any spell they're trying to cast. The earthquake affects all terrain, vegetation, structures, and creatures in the area. The specific effect of an earthquake depends on the nature of the terrain where it is cast. So if you are in a cave, cavern, or tunnel, the roof collapses, dealing 8d6 points of damage to any creature caught underneath the cave-in, and pinning that creature beneath the rubble. The earthquake cast on the roof of a very large cavern could endanger those outside the actual area, but below the falling debris and rubble. Cliffs! Earthquakes cause cliffs to crumble, creating a landslide that travels horizontally as far as it falls vertically. Any creature in the path takes 8d6 points of bludgeoning damage and is pinned beneath the rubble, see below. If you're on open ground, each creature standing in the area makes a DC 15 reflex save or falls down. Fissures rip open in the earth, and every creature in the ground has a 25% chance to fall into one. These fissures are 40 feet deep. At the end of the spell, all fissures grind shut. Treat all trapped creatures as though they were in the bury zone of an avalanche, trapped without air. If you're inside of a structure, any structure on open ground takes 100 points of damage, enough to collapse a typical wooden or masonry building, but not a structure built of stone or reinforced masonry. Hardness does not reduce this damage, nor is it halved as damage dealt by objects normally. Any creature caught inside of a collapsing structure takes 8d6 points of bludgeoning damage and is pinned beneath the rubble. See below. If you are in a river, lake, or marsh, fissures open into the water, draining the water away from the area and forming muddy ground. Soggy marsh or swampland becomes quicksand for the duration of the spell, sucking down creatures and structures. Each creature in the area must make a reflex save or sink into the mud and quicksand. At the end of the spell, the rest of the body of water rushes in to replace the drained water, possibly drowning those caught in the mud. And if you are pinned beneath, a creature pinned beneath the rubble takes 1d6 points of non-lethal damage per minute while pinned. If they fall unconscious, they must make a constitution check or take an additional 1d6 points of damage until either freed or dead. Okay. That's an earthquake. And I do think it actually kind of makes people happy. JP was saying quicksand. We actually have quicksand. So if it's cast in a swampland or so, we got quicksand. I like this. Now the interesting thing is that this lasts for exactly 1 round. The normal duration that we're doing here would be the duration as rolled. I'm inclined to go ahead and do that, but that means that this could be an earthquake that lasts a really, really long time. So, like, if we take our example of our alpha level Psyker at level 20, that means that the duration maximum could be 192 rounds. Divide that by 10 to get minutes. That is 19.2 minutes. Let's just call it a 20-minute long earthquake. A 20-minute long earthquake that is going to do, because it does, 100 damage per round, 19,000, right? Potentially 19,000 damage to all structures in the area. Forget about wooden or masonry structures. That is going to tear the foundations out of every single standing building. When we add into things like the fissures that are opening up, it's going to basically suck down everything anyway. It would essentially go into a city like a rototiller into a garden and just plow the entire city under with everything in it. Part of me thinks that this is actually a little bit too much. Part of me also thinks that this is actually appropriate, because as incredible as this is, you have to keep in mind that this is also centered on the Psyker, which means that you would have to be in the city when it started. Now, granted, you could be standing on, say, like a starship or something. You create an earthquake here and lift off in your ship and just leave the city to be destroyed. But otherwise, this is not the kind of thing that you could use while you and the rest of your party is in the city, because it would kill you and it would kill everybody else. I am inclined to do it, though. So, duration, I'm going to go ahead and make that roll psychic power in rounds, and I'm going to go ahead and say create an earthquake. Rules as written. That is insane. So again, we're talking about doing damage indirectly, and I think that we've accomplished that. For the fire or lightning storm, it's going to rain down fire and lightning on the city. Whether you actually hit something is going to depend on what actually you hit. And since you get to roll this essentially once per round, 20s happen. A lot. The question is then, you gotta consider this. This is a local ability, which means that when you cast a fire or lightning storm, if you roll a 20 and you hit a creature, you actually have to pick what creature you hit. So that creature could be an enemy, but if you don't have any enemies in front of you, somebody is still getting hit by this. The same thing goes for a vehicle. You might just go ahead and say random. And so I will just assign it to a random target and say, yeah, this person got completely splattered by a fireball coming from the air. I realize that most players are psychopaths, but is that really something that you want to do? The same thing is also true of if we went with cold. Like, creating an extreme cold like this is liable to kill dozens to hundreds of people, if not thousands. The same thing goes for the acid rain, the same thing is going to go for the earthquake. Like, if you use earthquake, you are going to pretty much kill the entire population of the city. I realize that it's a game, and so, who cares? I play Grand Theft Auto 2. Nobody cares about all the people that you run over on the sidewalk and everything, but in a tabletop game, you're usually generally forced to face the consequences of your actions. If you walk into an area and cast Earthquake, and just, annihilate an entire city, if anybody finds out, they're gonna be after you. Use with caution. Alright, so that should take care of energy release. What was the next one? So the next one was combat maneuvers. Obviously we're not really doing combat maneuvers. At least, I can't think of a good reason to do combat maneuvers. It is possible, I guess. But I'm not sure if I see the need. If you can give me a reason to do combat maneuvers at a local scale, I'm willing to listen. But as of right now, I think I'm going to skip it. Healing and restoration. This is something that I might be able to do. The question is just how. So for healing, I don't know. I just don't know. For healing, we get to roll our psychic power and we get to divide the result up amongst targets in our sensitivity range. So that's fine. And that can be some pretty big healing, because again, if we have an alpha level Psyker, and we go with maximum, that's 192, that'd be 192 points that you could distribute up to 16 people. That could be 12 hit points per person, or it could be 192 hit points to one person. That is a pretty big surge. Instead of doing that directly, I am wondering... The next step down below healing is regeneration. And the next step below direct healing, like restoring hit points. I guess I should say that. The next step below restoration would be healing. So things like regeneration. Maybe that's what we should do. So for healing and restoration. So healing and restoration. Again, the range is going to be the same. So what I think we're going to do is this. So for healing, this is going to be healing. Well, no, hold on. How did we do this last time? It was power, range, and notes. So power, we already got range. And so I'm just going to say effect. So the power is going to be healing. And the effect is going to be this. It is going to give... grant fast healing, and that's going to be equal to sensitivity. To all creatures. Well, no, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm just going to say healing. So duration is going to be the same thing. It's going to be a number of rounds. The effect is going to be to grant fast healing equal to sensitivity. That should actually be brackets. To all creatures. Now, this does not discriminate. That means that if you're in the city and you're having these guerrilla-style firefights with the enemy, if you were to use this, you could heal everybody in the city, including your enemies. But it might be worth it. This is essentially like the counter to the acid rain. So the acid rain is going to deal a lot of damage over time. This is going to grant fast healing equal to your sensitivity to all creatures. And since this is equal, or this happens over a number of rounds, since the acid rain only hits once every 10 rounds, the fast healing would be able to restore pretty much all the damage dealt by the acid rain. Since it covers the same area, it would essentially just cancel it out. Which would be kind of weird, but yeah, technically it would work. And the save, if you wanted to give one, the save is going to be will. So what was the next one? Right, so the next one is cleanse. Now for cleanse, it allows you to suppress these conditions. I don't really see a way to stop this unless we just ignore exhausted, panicked, nauseated, and frightened. Because those are all second stage. And we could do that. I mean, that is something that we could do. So, cleanse. The duration. For rounds, the effect will be to suppress one of the following conditions for the duration. And that's going to be sleep, bleeding, blinded, burning. Confused, cowering, dazed, confused, cowering. We'll just do this one letter at a time. Dazed, dazzled, and deafened. Now we'll start down here. Dazed, dazzled, deafened. Which, by the way, I should point out that if your character is naturally blind or deaf, this does not suddenly make them see or hear. This only works on the condition, which implies it has to be an inflicted condition. If your character is naturally, or has a permanent effect, it doesn't actually fix it. Let's see, not exhausted, but fascinated and fatigued. Not frightened, not nauseated, but off target. Paralyzed. Which again, if your character is naturally paralyzed, this does not make them walk. Shaken, sickened, staggered, stunned. And the personal one that I made up, stirred. Alright, so that should be it. And of course there is a save. If you wanted to make it, it's a will save. And that means that the last one on here is Leech. And Leech is simple. So you get to roll your psychic power, divide the result in half, rounded down. You deal damage to the target and heal yourself. In the case of leeching an entire city, in the case of leeching to an entire city, I think what we're going to do is this. So there's going to be no duration, actually. So the duration is instant. It's the first instant one that we've had. The effect, however, is going to be deal 1 damage to every creature. Well, to every living creature, I should say. And since we're talking about anywhere from, 1 to potentially thousands, and I'm just going to say deal 1 damage to every living creature. That is going to include your own party. And I'm going to say fully restore all hit points, stamina points, and resolve points. So, you're going to do 1 damage to literally everything, and you're going to restore everything about you. The save is going to be a will save. I mean, that does sound rather overpowered, but it is also just you. And we'll see how your own party feels about you draining their life too. I mean, they can make a will save to try and resist it, but good luck with that. And I should point out that the save for this is going to be DC Psychic Power. So essentially, you're just going to roll versus their roll. And so that takes care of Leech. I mean, it's like the greatest heal you might ever get. And in this case, it does fully restore you. It does 1 damage to every living creature. This is not the kind of thing that's going to really fit into the regional category, though. And that was all we had. Then we get into buffing and debuffing, and I don't know how much of this is going to be useful. So, Iron Arm. You get to roll your psychic power. You get to add natural armor equal to your sensitivity to a number of targets equal to your sensitivity in range for a number of rounds equal to your roll. I mean, yeah, that's good in combat, but that doesn't really help on the local level. Enfeeble could be expanded. But again, we're talking about local, so we're talking about potentially doing that to your own party as well. We could do endurance as well. I mean, warp speed could also be done as well. All of these could technically scale up. The same thing with inflict. So, again, we wouldn't be able to inflict exhausted, frightened, nauseated, or panicked. But all of the other ones we could potentially inflict on an entire population. So, yeah, I'm inclined to go ahead and do this. Iron Arm I do not see benefiting us, but the rest of them can. The rest of these can. So, buff / debuff. Not debug, debuff. There we go. So the first one that we're going to do is going to be Enfeeble. The duration is going to be roll psychic power for rounds. The effect. So this one simply says choose either strength, dexterity, or constitution. Deal damage equal to sensitivity to that stat for a number of rounds equal to that roll. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Choose strength, dexterity, or constitution. And we're going to lower chosen ability score well, no. We're going to deal damage equal to sensitivity to all creatures for duration. Yeah, for duration, that's fine. And the save will be a will save. Now, interestingly enough, this seems like it's nothing, right? This could actually kill people. So the funny thing about your ability scores is that while most of them cannot be reduced to less than 1, if they are reduced to less than 1, it kills whatever creature it is. I mean, a creature that has its strength reduced to 0 is literally too weak to support itself, and it dies. A creature with 0 dexterity doesn't really die. It can't move. A creature with 0 constitution is dead. Period. Unless it is undead, in which case all undead creatures have a score of 0 anyway. A creature with an intelligence of 0 is brain dead, essentially. And if it's brain dead, it's just dead. The same thing goes for wisdom and charisma. I mean, a 0 in charisma is not really a thing, kinda, but... Let's see, ability scores, I don't think it actually shows anything here. It doesn't, I'd have to go back to here. So, ability scores. Yeah, these don't actually go lower. Yeah, here we go, 0. So, according to the Pathfinder, score of 0 strength, too weak to move in any way and unconscious. Dexterity, 0, incapable of moving but not unconscious. A constitution of 0 is dead. It literally says a creature with a constitution of 0 is dead. It has kicked the bucket. It has shuffled off its mortal coil, run down the curtain, and joined the choir invisible. In so many words. So, yeah. Essentially, if you chose to reduce strength or dexterity, you could paralyze an entire population. If you choose constitution, you could just kill the entire population. But again, this does not it doesn't discriminate versus friend and foe, so use with caution. That means the next one, and I'm almost out of time for today, so let's see how much more I can get done. The next one is going to be the endurance. Endurance, warp speed, slow, and inflict. These are all going to be basically just the same things. So I can essentially just write it once and I should be able to just keep going with it. So the first one is just endurance. Duration, effect, and save. So the duration is going to be... What am I doing here? Roll psychic power for a number of rounds. The effect is going to be simply grant the endurance feat to all creatures. The save is a will save, although I don't know why you would want to do it. It's super simple. Next is going to be, I believe it's called warp speed. Yes. Warp speed. This is all the same thing, except we replace endurance with haste. And it's not really a feat, so it's just grant haste to all creatures. Now, why you want to do this to an entire population, I don't know. Maybe because it's funny. But you can totally do it. Slow, same thing, just the opposite. And then the last one is inflict. And so that is going to be essentially the same thing as cleanse. So I'm just going to copy this and then paste it down here. Oops, wait, first. Inflict. And instead of suppress, it will be inflict one of the following conditions for the duration. So, you can cause an entire population to sleep, be bleeding, blind, burning, whatever it is. You just think it, and it happens. Now, that one they actually do get to save verses, because I'm pretty sure that nobody wants any of these. However, I mean, if you think about it, if you were to inflict an entire population with stirred, you could actually keep everybody up at night. And think about this, because we're out of time, so I'm going to wrap things up here. This is a number of rounds, which means that our alpha level Psyker can only keep people awake for 192 rounds. That's 19.2 minutes. It's not much, right? I divide that by 10, it's 19.2 minutes. Now consider this. An alpha class Psyker at level 20 would have a pool of points equal to their level times their sensitivity. So that's going to be 16 sensitivity times 20 rounds, giving us 320 points for them to play with. Sure, they can only keep people up for 20 minutes at a time at max, but it also only costs 5 points to do it. If I took the 320 that they had, they could cast it 64 times. If I multiply that by 19.2 minutes, that comes out to 1,228.8 minutes. If I divide that by 60, That comes out to 20.48 hours. Which means that an alpha level Psyker could just stop people from sleeping for an entire day. And they can do that every day. Which means that an alpha level Psyker could just keep an entire population of a city awake forever. Or they could make them sleep forever. Or they could inflict any one of these conditions on them forever. I mean, imagine if they fascinated the entire population for an hour and they made the subject of fascination themselves. It would essentially be a cult of personality at that point. And all they have to do is just continue to exercise their power against them. It would be terrifying. Especially given the fact that, this is also going to affect your own party, so they're going to be included in that. Your own party, your family, everyone. Everyone gets affected. So we did a lot today. We got through a lot of them. The only things left is telekinesis, telepathy, and divination. Both of which are going to be really interesting. I don't necessarily know how telekinesis is going to affect an entire area. I'll have to think about that one a little bit. Things like assail, crush, Gate of Infinity might be easier to do. The Vortex of Doom, I don't know if that's going to scale up. It might. It might scale up. That would be awful. Telepathy is going to be really terrifying because while telekinesis is going to have very limited uses over that much of a range, the ability to dominate the minds of an entire population cannot be ignored. So, we'll get to that next time. For now, we're just going to leave our Psykers where they are, which is already terrifying. And once we get done with telepathy, telekinesis, and divination, we get to move on to the regional effects. If you thought it was scary enough that they could do this to an entire town, imagine what they can do to an entire continent. Or at least half of a continent. I mean, technically Continental's the next stage up. So, if you want to see that, make sure that you subscribe, hit the bell icon, you know all the good stuff to do. If you know somebody else who is also into tabletop games or Warhammer 40k and you think they might enjoy this, send it to them. I mean, hopefully they'll come and actually sit in the live streams and share their insights, but, whatever happens. Otherwise, though, if you just like me and what I'm doing, leave a like on the stream. Go ahead, leave a comment down below. If you want to come yell at me more, you can always join the Discord server, because I'm usually always there. You can just say whatever you want to me there. It's not going to bother me. But if you want to play with us, you're going to have to join the Discord server and come to the Behind the Screen channel to let me know what your availability is. Do that, and I will see if I can work you into one of our games. I'm always looking for new players. So, I hope to see you there. I hope to see you next week. We're going to enjoy September as much as we can because October is going to be just a complete mess. So, let's enjoy it while we can. I look forward to seeing you then, and until that time, take care.